Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's best Centric episode for each character of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So this video is a Patreon requested video requested by Kyrie091. Thank you so much for your support and your request. So this is the second in the series that Kyrie091 has requested. The first was the Next Generation, where I named my favorite Centric episode for each Next Generation character, but in this video I'm moving on to Deep Space Nine and tackling what my personal favorite Centric episode for each of the characters of Deep Space Nine. So, as I did with Next Generation, I'm choosing, going through all the main characters and a select list of supporting characters. Now, Deep Space Nine has a ridiculous amount of supporting characters, so I did have to cut it off. At one point, I limited myself to 17 characters altogether, which is still more than what I did for the next gen. But yeah, so 17 characters of Deep Space Nine, and I will be going through and listing the episode where they're featured prominently, and picking the one that was my favorite. Now, this doesn't necessarily have to showcase their character the most, and it doesn't necessarily have to be all about this particular character, but it's an episode in which this character really shines, and I think the best episode that features this character prominently. So, I am just going to go ahead and jump into my list. So we'll start with good old Benjamin Sisko, the captain, and the episode I'm picking for his best Centric episode is In the Pale Moonlight. Now, this is one of my favorite episodes of Deep Space Nine. I think it's one of the best. I don't think Avery Brooks' acting is any good in this episode. I think it's the worst thing about the episode, but as a character episode for Benjamin Sisko, I think it is definitely the best. He is the main character of this episode for sure. He is the framing device of using his captain's log to tell the story and the regrets, and I think the whole episode is really about him stretching the limits of his conscience and finding out that he can indeed live with it, which is the heart of the episode and why the episode is so great. So yeah, this is easily the best Centric episode for good old Captain Sisko. So Kyrie091, who requested this video, also sent me his list of who he would choose for each character of Centric episode, and for Sisko he also chose In the Pale Moonlight, which is not a surprise because it's kind of a no-brainer on that one. So next I'll get into the good old first officer, Major Kira Nerys, and Kyrie091's pick for her is the episode Duet, which is also my pick for Kira. Again, this is kind of a no-brainer, one of the best episodes of the show, and the best use of Major Kira, who, unlike Avery Brooks, who doesn't do that great of an acting job in Pale Moonlight, Nana Visitor does an amazing job in Duet. In fact, her chemistry with guest actor Hera Shulin is what really sells the episode, and it really delves into Kira's crisis of conscience, and it deals with her prejudice as she wants this guy to be guilty so badly, and when when they find out he's guilty, she jumps on it, and he really plays mind games with her, and then finds out that he is in fact not guilty and just doing this so that Cardassia has to admit its guilt. It's such a dynamic episode, it has such ups and downs, and really delves into Kira's character, and yeah, arguably one of the best episodes of the entire franchise. So yeah, that is easily my pick for Kira Nerys. So next we'll get into Jadzia Dax, and Kyrie091's pick for her is Facets, I think it is. Sorry, I always pronounce that one wrong. Is it Facets? Yeah, I think so. Anyway, Yeah, I mean, that episode does deal with Jadzia Dax, but it's not one of my personal favorites. So my pick for Jadzia is actually Rejoined. I think this is a really great episode, not just because it deals with LGBT issues. It does that by actually featuring a same-sex couple kiss, which in the mid-90s was pretty unheard of. Not entirely, but not really the norm. So it was kind of risky for Deep Space Nine to do this, but more than that, I think it's actually a good analogy for the analogy they use for something that's taboo in society and how it goes against just two people who want to love each other, which I think is a good analogy for the discrimination against the LGBTQ community. But also more than that, I think this is probably Terry Farrell's best acting job. I criticize Avery Brooks, and rightfully so, for his acting, which I will continue to do, but he's actually a really good director, and he directed this episode, and so you get some really, he's really good at getting really good performances out of people, and there's great performances in this episode that deal with, the topic of forbidden love and having to decide to ruin one's life in order to, go in on this forbidden love, which Jadzia was willing to do, but her partner was not, making it quite tragic. So I think this is easily the best episode for Jadzia Dax. So next we'll get to Miles O'Brien, and Kyrie091's pick for Miles O'Brien is Honor Among Thieves. I actually didn't care too much for that episode. To me, it was kind of just aping the movie Donnie Brasco. I mean, it was okay. I didn't think it was a terrible episode. But for me, my pick is Whispers. One of my favorite episodes of Deep Space Nine, the episode that features O'Brien very prominently. Some people hate this episode for a reason that will always elude to me. I love this episode from the very first time I saw it. It has always been one of my favorite episodes of Deep Space Nine. That, spoilers for the episode, because I have to get into spoilers to talk about it. We follow O'Brien and how everyone around him is acting very weird and strange, but we find out at the end of the episode it's not actually O'Brien. It's a clone of O'Brien who was sent to assassinate some visiting diplomats, and that's why everyone was acting weird around him. And I think that perspective shift was fucking brilliant, and I think Calmini absolutely sells this episode. He sells the fact that he makes the audience think that something's wrong with everyone else and not wrong with O'Brien, because how could there be something wrong with O'Brien, because he's such a good bloke. And the ending was quite tragic, where the replicant dies, and it says, "I tell Keiko I love her," right before he dies, to the real O'Brien. What a hollering great episode, and the best use of Miles O'Brien, who must suffer, by the way. That's my favorite O'Brien episode. So next on my list is Odo. Now for Odo, Kyrie091 chose The Begotten, which that's a decent episode. That's where he learns to appreciate his adoptive father, and he becomes a changeling again. It's a touching episode, but it is not my pick. My pick is Things Past. Another episode from season 5, but this one deals with Odo's past and how he was celebrated as someone who, was a Bajoran hero, but in fact, he used to work for the Cardassians. If you believed he never got his hand dirty while working for the Cardassians, you would be naive, and apparently most of the Bajorans and people who worked with him were naive, and his guilt weighing so heavily on his conscience that when an artificial version of the Link was formed with other members of the crew, Garrick, Sisko, Jadzia, it turns out they had to relive the events of his worst mistake, where he had executed innocent Bajorans who did nothing wrong. And that was so hollowing. It's so really touching, getting deep into Odo's character and how everyone, even the best of people, can make horrible mistakes, and how it has haunted his past and him having to relive it to others. Very powerful stuff, and the actor plays this amazingly well. So next, we'll get into Julian Bashir, Dr. Bashir, as Garrick says. Let's see, Kyrie091's pick for Bashir, picks 2 episodes, can't decide one, is either The Quickening or Extreme Measures. And as for me, my 2 episodes would actually be either The Quickening or Inter Arma Alium Silent Legus, or however that pretentious title is pronounced. But I actually am going to go with The Quickening. Not a huge fan of Extreme Measures, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, The Quickening, I think, again, one of the best Deep Space Nine episodes. Absolutely love it. I think it is a powerful episode for Bashir in particular. I think it is easily the best episode for Bashir. Well, then there's the other one with the pretentious title, but this one I think is even better because it really gets into his arrogance and how he thinks, oh yeah, it's some disease, I can solve it easily, and everyone else around him doubts him, and he's like, oh yeah, and he actually does more harm than good. But there's one woman who believes in him and supports him, and he's able to save her child's life. And even as she dies, he's able to give the news that he can have a vaccine that will cure infants of this disease, so that the next generation, not Picard and Riker, but the next generation of babies born on this planet will be free of this disease that had been haunting them for centuries. And that was so powerful. And then you get the other side plot of the suicide doctor who thinks that Bashir is just giving false hope, and that he thinks it's more merciful to just give them a day of peace where all they get to hang out with their family and have a feast before they die is the most merciful thing to do in such a hopeless situation. I definitely see where he's coming from. And Bashir is like not having it, but I think I kind of agree with Trevian in this case, and to see the two juxtapositions. But the way that Trevian is so flabbergasted when Bashir actually comes up with the vaccine and says it will be a privilege to spread this to everyone was such a touching fucking moment. And Bashir wasn't doing this for fame. He didn't care. He didn't get any of the credit. He was just sitting in the background, and it was still haunting him that he wasn't able to find a cure, only a vaccine, which was quite a dark ending, how it ended with him still struggling to find a cure. What a powerful episode. So next, we'll get into good old Worf. Joined the show in season 4. So almost halfway point of the show, we got Worf who came in. And so Kyrie091's pick for Worf is By Inferno's Light, which I actually think that episode's a bit overrated. Not a huge fan of that, especially the Worf storyline with him. Was that the one where he was fighting all the Jem'Hadar, or was By Inferno's Lights part 1? I can't remember, where Garrick was lying to him and said he wanted to join Starfleet. I don't know. Either way, I wasn't a huge fan of the Worf storyline in this 2-parter. For me, my pick for Worf is Change of Heart, which I know a lot of people don't like this episode, but I love this episode. I think it is one of the most underrated episodes and one of the most powerful episodes for Worf, that deals with the Worf, Jadzia, Dax marriage, and the best episode that deals with their relationship, in my opinion, where they go on the mission together to rescue a Cardassian informant, and the information that he has could save millions of lives. Yet Jadzia is attacked by Jem'Hadar and mortally wounded, and if Worf doesn't get her back to the runabout within a certain amount of time, she's going to die, and he doesn't have time to save the informant, because if he does, Jadzia will definitely die. So he's forced to choose, and he chooses to abandon the mission and save Jadzia instead. And the informant is killed, and millions of people probably die because of this, because they weren't able to get that valuable information. And he sacrificed the many to save the few. And you see his love and his passion for Jadzia, that even though he knew it was the wrong thing to do, he just could not bring himself to do it. So what's a powerful character story for Worf. Such a powerful character story for Worth, and very touching. Anyway, next we'll get into Quark, and Kyrie091's choice for Quark was the Magnificent Ferengi, which is an episode I will be mentioning later on. It is one of my favorite Ferengi episodes, but for Quark, I chose Business as Usual, which I think was a great character story for Quark rather than just... I decided to go with a dramatic, good character story rather than one of those comedic comedy episodes that usually involves Quark. Business as Usual saw him going bankrupt, and his only way out was to become an arms dealer, and then everyone on the station shunned him for doing so, and then his conscience was wrestling with this. In fact, when he found out that he was going to be selling weapons to someone who's going to kill millions of people, he just couldn't bring himself to do it, and instead double-crossed the people he was working for and had that person who wanted to kill millions of people killed. And that was such a great character moment for Quark. An awesome character moment for Quark. Pretty good episode too, so that is my pick for Quark. So next we will get into Jake Sisko. Doesn't have too many episodes. Kyrie091's choice for Jake is The Visitor, which is also my pick because this is another no-brainer, especially with Jake, who doesn't have that many good episodes, let's be fair. In fact, I struggle to think of any other episodes that he's the central character that are actually really good. And The Visitor is one of the best episodes of the show, deals with the father-son relationship between Jake and Benjamin extremely well, where Benjamin is seemingly killed but instead is trapped through time and occasionally visits Jake, but Jake is unable to save him from the oblivion that he lives in, and it ends up destroying his life. It destroys his marriage. He becomes obsessed with it and ruins his entire life until he's an old man, and he finally realizes the way to save Benjamin is that if he dies when Benjamin is visiting him, then Benjamin will go right back to the moment right before he died and is able to change things. And to see Benjamin crying over his son who's about to kill himself and pleading with him not to do it, Jake says that he's doing it for not just for him, not just for his father, but also for himself, so that the boy that he was can live a full life. And anyone who does not cry at this ending is heartless. You need to go find your heart. It is one of the most powerful, emotionally powerful moments in the show. So easily the best Jake Sisko Centric episode. So next we're going to get into Ezri Dax, and I don't believe Kyrie091 had Ezri listed, but I did. And my pick for Ezri is After Image, which I like Ezri. I think she's good. I agree with the decision to add her when Jadzia had to go. And I think Nicole DeBoer did an amazing job as Ezri, but she didn't really have that many good Centric episodes. Some of the Centric episodes she was in, was Field of Fire, and which I think was terrible, or Prodigal Daughter, which a lot of people hate, but I actually thought was just okay. But After Images, I think definitely her best one. It's it's her first episode. Well, not the first one she's introduced in, but the first one that deals with her primarily as she's arrives at the station and meets everyone and has these lingering thoughts. Julian kind of hits on her, but Worf is really pissed off about that and doesn't want anything to do with her. And she has to deal with Garrick, who says that she's useless and terrible at her job, and then asks her to leave before he says something unkind. Sorry, that's one of my favorite Garrick moments. But yeah, that's the best episode for Ezri Dax. So speaking of Garrick, we are going to get into him next. Kyrie091's choice for Garrick is Impact Noor, and Kyrie091 says, for real, I love Impact Noor. It's legit horror, it's scary intense. I always feel bad for the other ensigns as they get cut down. Well, I very much respect your opinion, Kyrie091, but which I don't like that episode at all. I think that is a bad horror episode, and I think there are actually much better horror episodes in the franchise than that one. I'm sorry, it just comes off as too cliche to me. My favorite Garrick episode is Improbable Calls, which is the first part of the two-parter, Dice Cast being the second part, which is also a great episode, but I think as far as Garrick is concerned, the first part is definitely his best. It definitely has some of the best quotes, such as his saying the moral of the story of The Boy Who Cried Wolf is that you should never tell the same line twice, and then telling Julian Bashir that he wants to go in his room, find the metal rod, and eat it, and Bashir's response, "You must be joking." And he says, "Yes, doctor, I am." And then other things. God, there's so many great quotes, and his interactions with Odo in this episode are fucking gold. Pure gold. I wanted to pick In the Pale Moonlight for Garrick, but of course I had to pick that for Benjamin. And even though I do think In the Pale Moonlight's a better episode, and I do think Garrick is probably even better in that, he's not really the central character in that episode the way he is in this episode. So my compromise is to do Benjamin for In the Pale Moonlight, and then Improbable Calls, which is a great episode in its own right, for Garrick. So, next we will do Gul Dukat. And Kyrie091's pick for Dukat is Waltz, which I think is a decent episode. I don't know if I like this episode as much as some other people do, though. My pick for Gul Dukat is Sacrifice of Angels. I do think this, even though it's more of an ensemble episode, it's still where Dukat really shines when he talks to Wei Yun about what he would do with Earth. The key to subjugating humanity is to make people respect you, and it really shows what trying to kind of twisted, fucked up person he is, and then that makes the ending so much more satisfying when he fucking goes insane and he loses everything and goes, "Victory was within our grasp," and literally goes insane when Damar kills his daughter. Very powerful episode for Dukat in my humble. So next is Wei Yun, where Kyrie091 says his favorite episode that features Wei Yun is All of Them. Now, I think that is a bit of a cop-out myself, although I can understand that answer because Wei Yun is so fucking awesome. But my pick for Wei Yun is Treachery, Faith, and the Great River, which is a different version of Wei Yun than we've seen through most of the episodes because they're clones. So this is actually a different clone. This is the nice clone who wants to defect to the Federation, which I thought was a fucking brilliant. And it was so great seeing his interactions with Odo and revealing some of the Vorta mythology, and seeing him kill himself in order to save Odo, and having to deal with the other Wei Yun while Damar gloats at his predecessor's death. Great Wei Yun episode in my humble. So next we will get to Ram, and I do not believe Kyrie091 had Ram listed, but for me, my favorite Ram episode is the episode I said I would mention, and that is the Magnificent Ferengi. Now, arguably, this centers on Quark more than Ram, but Ram is like his right-hand man in this episode, and Ram, I gotta be honest, I don't always find this character funny. Sometimes I find him annoying, sometimes I find him downright unfunny, but in this episode he was fucking hilarious. Ram was definitely the funniest character in this episode, having great moments like when Nog refused to join their team. He's like, "But you can fire a phaser!" Or when Nog was insisting everyone call him Sir, and Quark said, "We're all a team here," and then Ram corrected him, "We're all a team, Sir." And many great moments. Like, Ram is just so hilarious in this episode and just shines so much. So yeah, that is my pick for Ram. Speaking of Nog, that is the character we will get to next. And again, I do not believe Kyrie091 had Nog listed, but my pick for Nog is the Siege of AR-558, aka Saving Private Ryan, or Saving Private Nog. But yeah, so this was a great episode for Nog, where he was, wanting to be this Starfleet hero and idolizing these people who had been through war, but learning that actually war is hell and nothing to be idolized about. But he actually comes through the team and saves them, but has to deal with being wounded at the end of the episode, which was very tragic. So yeah, that's my pick for Nog, and I know I'm not going to pick the name of the episode. Oh, it's only a paper moon. Not going to pick that because that features Vic Fontaine, and fuck Vic Fontaine. Anyway, so my next I'll get into Martok. And again, I don't think Kyrie091 had Martok listed, but my pick for Martok is Soldiers of the Empire. Great Worf episode, but I think an even better Martok episode, because it deals with his PTSD about being held captive by the Dominion and how that's not very Klingon to be dealing with that, but Worf helps him through it, and it really gets him to see that this crew is ready to mutiny against him, and tries to make him aware of the how the crew is demoralized, and when he doesn't listen, Worf challenges him to the death, and then lets him win so that he can have this victory and take on the Jem'Hadar. One of the best Klingon episodes, I would say, in the franchise, and a really good episode. So next we'll get into Damar, and again, I don't think Kyrie091 has Damar listed, but my pick for Damar is easily The Changing Face of Evil, where he gives that great speech about rebelling against the Dominion. One of the most powerful moments in the entire show, coming from a character who was nothing but a one-line character at first, and then he became this powerful rebel leader that you wanted to get up and cheer, and it was one of the most powerful moments in the show. And even throughout, you see him sort of standing up to Wayun. Wayun is joking, "Oh, you look somehow naked. You don't have your bottle with you," and then that pissing him off. Great moments, great Damar episode. And then finally, I'll get into the character of Win Adami. And again, Kyrie091 did not have her listed, and my pick for her, good old annoying character, but a character who's meant to be annoying and frustrating, is The Reckoning. And I reckon that this is a pretty good episode, particularly for Win, because it does show how jealous she is, and how she doesn't really give a fuck about the prophets, and it's really about her own power, and she doesn't like that Benjamin gets all the attention and she wants it, which is exactly so true to her character. To be honest, I really didn't like the episode the 5th season one. What was it called? The one where Cisco looks into the orb and gets visions from the prophets and goes, "They're the locusts!" I'm blanking on the name of that episode, but a lot of people said they like Kai Wynn in that episode. I hate Kai Wynn in that episode because she's so out of character. She's actually being supportive of Benjamin and being supportive of the prophets. She doesn't give a fuck about the prophets. She's a twisted, evil witch who just cares about her own power. And so here, this episode gets back to that truth of her character. Anyway, so yeah, that is it. That's all the characters that I had listed. Kerry091 had a few others listed that I didn't get into, such as Keiko O'Brien, where he chose the assignment. I didn't really do Keiko, as I said, I'm not going to do all the characters, and some of them I just don't think are as important. And then his pick for Vic Fontaine is the Emperor's New Cloak, because he dies, and that's nice to see. And yes, it was a bit gratifying seeing Vic Fontaine die. However, the best episode is an episode without Vic Fontaine, and any episode he's in is... Well, it doesn't necessarily suck. The moment that he's in it sucks, because I don't want to see him, because I hate this character, and so no, there's no good episode. Not even him dying is good, in my opinion. Anyway, that is it. That is it for my video on Best Centric episode for each character of Deep Space Nine. Thank you so much. for watching this video. So I will be back to do some more Star Trek reviews. At the moment, reviewing season 2 of Next Generation. This Saturday, I'll be coming back with a review for Samaritan Snare, and then Monday, a review for Up the Long Ladder, and then Wednesday, I'll be over my Patreon for a Patreon exclusive video where I revisit my review for Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. So that's what's coming up on my channel, so be sure to check it out for that and many more Star Trek videos and many more videos and many other shows as well. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that, and thanks a lot for watching.